നമസ്കാരം സുഹൃത്തുക്കളെ, ഇന്ന് നമ്മളോടൊപ്പമുള്ളത് ലെസിക ചെറ്റി, ഒരു സൗത്ത് ആഫ്രിക്കൻ കമ്മ്യൂണിസ്റ്റുകാരി നമ്മളോട് പ്രതികരിക്കുന്നു. ഈ ലോകത്തെക്കുറിച്ച്, ലോകത്തിൻ്റെ രാഷ്ട്രീയ ക്രമത്തെക്കുറിച്ച്, കേരളത്തെക്കുറിച്ച്, സൗത്ത് ആഫ്രിക്കയെക്കുറിച്ച് നമുക്ക് ചോദിക്കാം. വെൽക്കം ടു കേരള.
Thank you.
How you feel in Kerala?
Oh, it's been wonderful. In fact, this is not my first trip to Kerala. I was here in 2016 on an official study tour of the education system. So this is my second trip to this part of India.
Good, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Very, very happy to know that. What I gathered from the conversation which we had before out of air, you have a very good connection with Mandela's family, isn't it? This is what I gathered. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, my family is directly connected with the late President Mandela's family. My father was a veteran of the struggle. He passed in 2017. He was a treason trialist. He was tried in the famous treason trial along with Nelson Mandela. What not many people are aware of is that the treason trial convicted 3 people. Mandela, of course, being a key leader that was convicted. However, the trial had tried 159 activists at the time, and my father was one of them. Okay. So there is a very direct link between the 2 families.
Happy to know that. The communist, he was also connected with the Communist Party, isn't it, Mandela?
Yes, he was. Mandela was a member of the Communist Party up until the time that he had passed. And again, this was not public knowledge because it was a deliberate decision to keep this fact not in the public domain for strategic and tactical reasons during our own struggle for liberation. So leading figures within the African National Congress were members of the Communist Party due to the close alliance and the influence that the Communist Party had on the ANC and continues to have on the ANC.
So let us come to some serious business. What we are seeing these days is a crony capitalism followed by most of the nation states in the world. If you take United States, if you take United Kingdom, the same is being followed. Recent statements by Donald Trump, give such an impression that those people are going to extreme protectionism. At the same time, they have been following crony capitalism. What you see, what vibe you get from his responses and his connection with the international society? Because a vote of American citizen is going to change the world order, isn't it? This is a saying. Because if a bad president comes there, it can affect the international society. What I see, or what we see from this part of the globe, is that there is a serious problem that United States is facing, because it has got international ramifications. So this man is speaking odd things. He is ready to attack North Korea or Iran. Such things are coming up. What do you see? What are the prospects of that kind of capitalism and a erratic person coming as a United States president?
Absolutely. We have been watching that space very closely. The coming in of Donald Trump as president of the US was indeed a very sad moment. We have seen, even during his election campaign trail, his right-wing campaign election manifesto based on narrow nationalist politics of the American electorate. So he came in on that card. But as a president, we've seen how he has drawn back some of the initiatives of the former President Obama as well. Not that President Obama himself had made many progressive changes in the American. But you see, when you talk about an American president, we are aware of the influence world over that America as a country has.
Exactly.
And therefore, we need to be able to understand and follow, the politics of the United States. Currently, the United States is on a trajectory of regime change in a number of countries, in the Americas, in Middle East, and even in Africa. Not for us to forego the ongoing trade war that it is having with China right now. It would appear that President Trump is on a trajectory of regime change. We've seen it in Venezuela at the beginning of the year, where a president is placed by the United States, and this is a vulgar form of the United States wanting to accumulate the wealth of Venezuela. More recently, we've seen it in Bolivia, where the president is forced to resign. It is nothing less than a coup, as properly stated by one of the current Democrat candidates, Bernie Sanders. And of course, the role of President Trump is basically on this trajectory. It is unfortunate, however, that the American electorate, in terms of its middle class wanting to protect their interest, is far too dominant. And therefore, we'll see this dominance of right-wing tendencies from the United States continue if Trump is successful.
The right-wing politics is fostering across the world, no doubt about it. But in between, what is the alternative that we can produce? As a left force across the world, they should bring up better ideas and give it to people, saying that we are a better alternative, isn't it? What are we lacking? In realistic perspective, are we lacking something? Or is it because the right wing is doing something good for the society as a whole? I don't think so, because they are pulling backward, isn't it? Because America or United States is thinking about 1800s. They wanted to go back to 1800s. That is a dream of Trump. But in a globalized world, we are moving forward. So there is two things happening. That is, one, capitalism is fostering, at the same time they want to go backward. Don't you think there is an irony, and what is the alternative that we can provide for the citizens across the world?
Well, in terms of the comparison, we believe that these are electioneering tactics played by the Trump election team to capitalize on the national question in terms of the USA electorate, in terms of the general population. You see them wanting to dispel foreign immigrants, the increase and the rise of xenophobia in the states, and so forth. All plays towards him maintaining his momentum. But in terms of what can the left do, I think that is a bit more of a complicated question. And one cannot quite respond to that fully right now. But the role of the left world over, we know, is the advancement of socialism against imperialism. But this, we understand, means that there is no single path, no single road to socialism. And therefore, in your respective countries, you would have the left, working class and progressive forces that would have to tailor-make specific agendas towards what they can contribute in terms of society.
To weaken the right forces.
To weaken the right forces, but capitalism, and therefore I'm saying it is far more complex. Capitalism is such an entrenched societal phenomenon that it is so entrenched in societies, in persons' makeup, mentally and psychologically, that it is hard to deconstruct that. Because whether you look at it in terms of what is capitalism and try to equate it to the supposedly 8 persons that owns the means of production across the globe, or if you have to look at it in the context of South Africa, where we speak about colonization of a special type, which says that in our context, even post-democracy, we have a peculiar situation where our colonizers have settled amongst the African nationals, and they still own the means of production. We refer to the Big Five. There are 5 companies in South Africa that owns the means of production, that owns the wealth of the country, including the land. So as communists, to try and re-socialize society as a whole, it is a very complicated and intricate process that you have takes time in terms of the popular struggles that you have to engage in. And as a Communist Party, we try to reimagine the future for South Africans, the future societies, by presently engaging in various struggles that we find, whether it is in education or health or in the social sector and so forth. So it's a fairly complicated one, but there is a method to how we engage currently on that.
What do you feel about Gandhi's influence in South Africa now? You know that Gandhi came back from South Africa in 1915 to India. Before he started struggle for India, for Indian independence, he was actually actively participating in the struggles in South Africa. And Mandela, your national leader, is actually quite connected with the Gandhian thought process. How well South Africa as a nation state is continuing the Gandhian values now? Is it still existing something now, or are you people also gone to a different track? Just want to know about the traces of Gandhism there in South Africa, which is left.
Indeed, that is quite accurate to say that there has been a very strong influence between the 2 leaders. The connection, and I think that the influence that Gandhi had played on Madiba was through the question of passive resistance, satyagraha and so forth. But it's also important to note that President Mandela was one of the first leaders that was a part of Umkhonto we Sizwe, that was our armed struggle. Nevertheless, when he became a president after his term of imprisonment, President Nelson Mandela was instrumental in urging South Africans not to move towards civil war. There was a time where we were on the brink of such a moment. You would perhaps be aware from media reports that during the period of 1991 and 1993, there were sporadic areas in the country that had erupted in violence. But Madiba was quite adamant and quite firm that violence at that moment could not take us to where we needed to go. We were just at the edge of our own democracy, and that is because of the influences of Gandhi towards him saying that you need to move towards social cohesion. In South Africa, we refer to our population as the Rainbow Nation. And to bring together all of this, it takes a higher type of leadership to say that there is a time for armed struggle, there's a time for such violence, but there's also a time to move peacefully through negotiations. And I think that that is what Gandhi had imparted on Mandela, and he was quite strong about that and our process of social cohesion.
I I remember reading about South Africa, a statement by our first Prime Minister Pandit Nehru, saying that we won't consider that ourselves got freedom if South Africa or African nations are not getting freedom. Our freedom will only be complete when the African nations get freedom. That's why, as I told you, that it is so intimate affair to know about Gandhian struggles in South Africa. And in between, or let us come back to some business in Kerala. What you see in Kerala, the Communist Party ruling the state, and how well you can connect with the process of communism working in Kerala and back in South Africa, because is there any similarities you can draw, or is there any differences? What is the take home from this state, especially the Human Development Index of the state is so up, or maybe it is quite in line with the international standards. So what you can take home from this things you are getting out of Kerala, because most of the time Human Development Index, the contribution of to the Human Development Index was through the left forces ruling the state. So that's why what have you understood, or what have you taken from this place to South Africa?
I have mentioned that this is my second trip to Kerala, and previously it was on a study tour, because South Africa has strong bilateral relations in terms of education with India. So we have from time to time quite vigorous exchanges on the education system. But I have picked up two areas of particular interest that I need to take back during this trip. Is the struggles and the initiatives that the state is playing in the area of transgender, the transgender community, and women and children. And I thought, when I had learnt of this was really an area to take back, because in South Africa the rate of women and child abuse is very high. In fact, some have dubbed South Africa as the capital of rape. It's quite an indictment, a negative indictment.
Indian case is not different.
But it is a reality, and a very grave one. And I've seen that there are very specific initiatives that have been making positive changes towards the livelihoods of women. The South African Communist Party has tried to work with transgender communities in South Africa, because in South Africa this community is marginalized. We have high rates of hate killings. And we feel that the government, the relevant Department of Social Development, is not really paying much attention towards this. And for me, mine would be to go back and to advise that we need to have government to government interaction on this question, so that government can learn from it. Because you see, if such initiatives into society does not come from a government level, it is not as effective in terms of the time that we can bring more change and stability to such tumultuous problems that we faced with.
That is true, because these people are too much marginalized. Even in Kerala, they were being treated so badly, but these days the things are changing. This is what you are explaining, and this government, especially this government, has got a big role in that. They have been inclusive growth. That is the only way it works. If you are again going back to the world order, the collapse of USSR, how has it affected world politics? Because before we were seeing a multipolar world in the Cold War era, and then it has changed into what we say a multipolar world. Is it a beneficial thing? Because the absence of a mighty figure like Russia or USSR is affecting at least developing nations like India, or at a particular point we were forced to go near to the United States. We are being inclined to United States because USSR is not a big power or Russia is not a big power. We wanted to go near to a mighty power like US. So what do you feel? Is it going to benefit the world, or multipolar world and US is a single power there, or is it a unipolar world? What is your assumption? Is it a multipolar world or a unipolar world?
Look, as the South African Communist Party, our analysis of the fall of USSR meant that the rise of neoliberalism world over. And what does this mean? Since that point, we have seen devastation of countries, and how the imperialist society then creates broader gaps between the rich and the poor. Exactly. And so forth. But also, it's important to understand for us as the South African Communist Party, what is a democracy? Not just in a liberal sense of the word, because if you take it in terms of a liberal sense of the word, it's the right to vote. So in a country like South Africa, you would have a nation that was denied, oppressed, given the vote, right to vote. But the right to vote for what? And it's important I raise this point because understanding democracy goes beyond that. It's the right to social services, the right to health and education, that our analysis has shown us that the fall of USSR meant that neoliberalism has risen, and governments then pay less attention to these aspects, but more attention to your liberal understanding of democracy. You give a person the right to vote.
A last question, perhaps. What is your message to Malayali audience, means Kerala audience, as a person from South African Communist Party and a daughter of a tall leader there? What is your message to Malayali audience, Kerala audience?
Myself and my experiences, in as brief as it has been, I think that we need to learn more about societies. Both countries have experience of colonization and the atrocities that we experienced from that. Although we have seen democracy, we still see a lot of struggles that continue. And until we come to an understanding that it is important for us to be able to have solidarity between our two peoples, so that we continue to uplift the poorest of the poor to a place of dignity, I don't think that that we will truly realize this concept of freedom. And therefore my message would be that we need to strengthen our solidarity between our two peoples. We need to strengthen our interaction at a state-to-state level and organization-to-organization level. I think that is key.
Thank you very much. It is a gentle conversation from your side.
Sure. Thank you.
നമ്മളോട് പ്രതികരിച്ചത് സൗത്ത് ആഫ്രിക്കയിലെ കമ്മ്യൂണിസ്റ്റുകാരി. കേരളത്തിൽ വന്നു, ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ പറഞ്ഞു. ഇനിയും വരുന്ന ദിവസങ്ങളിൽ നമ്മളുടെ രാജ്യം എങ്ങനെയാണ് സൗത്ത് ആഫ്രിക്കയുമായിട്ട് ചേർന്ന് പോകേണ്ടതെന്നും, എങ്ങനെയാണ് വികസനം ഉണ്ടാകേണ്ടതെന്നും, എങ്ങനെയാണ് പാവപ്പെട്ടവരുടെ പ്രശ്നങ്ങളെ അഡ്രസ്സ് ചെയ്യേണ്ടതെന്നും ഒക്കെ അവരിവിടെ ഷെയർ ചെയ്തു, അവരുടെ അറിവ് ഷെയർ ചെയ്തു. നമുക്ക് നന്ദി പറയാം മലയാളി ഓഡിയൻസിന്. നന്ദി, നമസ്കാരം.